if you know that what you have to contribute, what you have to give is greater than what you're asking for, you can ask for anything. Noise. It's a term. Obviously, it's a term that I've coined, but it's a term that now I think is pretty much in the mainstream. I've been using for like so many years, right? And it's to articulate what's that internal dialogue that's going on, and it's always something's right or something's wrong. That's what noise is. Now, people mostly think noise because the nature of noise, the derivation or the interpretation is it's negative, right? Yeah. Noise would sound like a negative connotation. But noise is just articulating the internal dialogue. So, and if you've got some sort of commentary that's going internally that something's wrong, we'll call that bad noise. And that's something you're always trying to get rid of. And that's what people look at in terms of peace of mind. And if we look at every aspect of human drive, whether it's making money, finding the love of your life, losing weight, like whatever it is, it doesn't make any difference what it is, religion, everything else, is in order to get rid of the noise in your head. If I make this amount of money, I won't have, I'll get peace of mind. I won't have this noise. If I have the love of my life, and for a period, you might get some dispensation. Just like if you buy a car, right? A new car that you really like, you're good for a week of no noise, and then it comes back, right? So, so there might be some dispensations and some departures from the noise once in a while, but for the most part, it becomes a consistency and a constancy that most people live with, right? And tinnitus is like we're taking it to an extreme where you just have a constant buzz or something. So, or Tourette's, someone's telling some noise inside your head is telling you to say weird shit. So, but for the most part, and obsessive disorders, those are all, where noise has gone to an extreme.
Well, and I look at my life. In my life, when I'm in an intimate relationship, it's like I'm not doing the right thing. I'm not. This person's not going to love me. Oh, they don't. They don't care about me. Like it's all these conversations that are always going on in my head, running in circles. And no matter who I'm with, I could be with girl A, girl B, girl C, same conversations happening with each of those girls. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And we'll talk about where noise sets up residence. That's a good conversation to have, right? Yeah. So it's this internal dialogue that we all know about. There's not anyone who doesn't know. I just say, just be quiet for a second and you can hear it. Just shut your mouth and you'll hear the noise in your head. So it's something's wrong is the nature of it. But most people think that good noise is not noise. No, good noise, meaning I'm amazing, things are going well, it's always going to be unbelievable. No, good noise you're trying to keep around. So anything you're trying to keep around is problematic, and anything you're trying to get rid of is problematic. So any noise is, problematic. It has you. And one of the essences, one of the bases, one of the pillars of this work that I use, it's a simple tenet, but is what has you and what do you have? So, does this have you or do you have it? Does your house have you or do you have a house? Does your car have you or do you have a car? And I can go through qualities and characteristics, which we will definitely spend time talking about. But so noise always has you. That's the nature of it. So when someone's highly effective, when someone's truly expressed, they don't have any noise in their head. So you can't be remembering your lyrics in front of 60,000 people or remembering your guitar licks in front of 60,000 people. You've got to have no noise in your head. You can't be going, man, I'm crushing it. As soon as you're doing that, you're not creating. Or you're going like, God, I can't remember my lyrics. As soon as you're doing that, you're out. So anytime you're fully freed up and fully expressed, you have absolutely no noise in your head. Not good noise, just no noise. And that's the concept right now. Based on trauma, based on environment, based on familial issues, noise sets up residence in different places. So it can set up residence, and what I mean by that people are more predisposed to have noise in different areas, right? So someone has it in intimate relationships. They might be great at dating, but as soon as they get into a committed intimate relationship, they're a cacophony of congestion. And that's totally me. So like in dating, I'm fantastic. I'm romantic. I can do dinner. I can do dates. I can do all the things. As soon as commitment comes in, it's like, oh, and like all the brakes go on, right? Like, and I completely become almost hostage in the relationship.
Yeah, you're held hostage by the noise in your head. And I'm similar in that area, obviously, based on the story I just shared, right? I'm similar in regards to that. So I feel like I'm in prison. Soon as dating, freed up and everything else, soon as I get into an intimate relationship, I feel like, oh my God, I'm in prison. That's actually how I got married. That's when I got married I've been married for 27 years now. But when I married Jen, right, I said, you could be on the cover of Brides magazine. I'm on the cover of Prison Today. And she goes, well, what the hell? Why would you get married like that? I said, well, apparently I can't stop getting married. I've been married 3 fucking times, right? I can't stop this. So I had to get it right. I had to figure this out. So I said, I'm only going to prison for you. This is not just a science experiment. I'm in love with you, but I'm got to head into prison and decorate my cell. Rather than jailbreaks, which is me cheating, me lying, me doing all those other stuff, which I'd done in my prior marriages, right?
Yeah.
And so I did. So I literally went in and embraced all the issues that came up for me in the area of an intimate relationship, rather than she's to blame for those issues.
Well, and we'll talk more. I think relationships and the whole what the purpose of relationship, that's a whole episode.
That's a whole episode unto itself.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, so it sets up residence. Noise sets up residence in different places. And therapy is the why it does a set up residence.
Yeah.
Right. Coaching is that it sets up residence. There's a difference, right? I don't care why. It just means you have a better explanation for how come you're fucked up.
They got a better excuse.
Yeah, now you can articulate how come you're fucked up in a better way and use therapeutic terms. So coaching's really that. It sets up residence there.
And they're great in pairing, right? Because the therapy
it works beautifully together.
Because you get the context, right, of what set it up, right? And then you know that you have it. So now what?
Yeah, now you have to take the action.
Now what's the action?
How do I dismantle it?
And that's where I think I found that for me personally, like therapy, I'd fall short is I never could figure out what the action was.
Well, right? It's not. I don't think therapy is necessarily designed for that. And it's like you go to 7-Eleven for the right thing. You don't go to 7-Eleven for like I don't know, a car, right? It's like if you went to Afghanistan hoping to get a good turn down service.
I heard that great steak
and a four seasons in Afghanistan. You got to commit to what it's actually for, right?
Yeah.
And so therapy is for a very particular connection to what happened to you, trauma, understanding, working things out, and coaching's for something entirely different. So where it sets up residence is what we look at. Like so, noise can set up residence in health. Mm-hmm. That's like. I have one of my clients who's a complete hypochondriac, right? So, and every day he's going to die. And I said, on your headstone, it's going to say, I told you I was sick, right? I'm like, yeah, I wish you'd die. I said, because you're annoying. So, that sets up residence there, right? Can set up residence in your career. It can set up residence in your craft. It can set up residence.
No, but those conversations aren't necessarily real. It's not like he is dying. Like it's not like he's got that in his head.
No, that's a noise in his head.
Yeah, it's just going around in circles.
I mean, most hypochondriacs never die. That's the thing, right? They
outlive everybody.
They live way beyond. They're just going to annoy you to death. You're going to die as a function of being annoyed to death. So. But we're looking to see where it sets up residence. So, as I said, career, craft, health, money, intimate relationships, sex, family.
Yeah.
So that's what you start to look like. How come in this area I have so much noise? And it explains why someone can have a really successful career and not a great craft. So someone can have really big career as an actor and not be particularly good. Or they can be really good and not have any career. It's because wherever that noise sets up residence doesn't allow you to have any kind of creativity, self-expression, movement. You just get the benefit of the noise.
And the noise, I mean, it's basically trying to prove a point. It's trying to
it's driving a particular narrative.
So it's telling you how you've already concluded what's already going to happen.
It's driving a particular narrative. It's already got conclusions, and it's dedicated.
It's
100% effective, actually. By the way, it's like gravity. Like man, it's fucking true.
Well, what I love about this pillar of your work, which is it's so easy. Like all I need to know is that I have noise or I don't have noise. And it could be anywhere, right? It could be in a relationship. It could be at work. It could be, trying to shoot the podcast, right? Like, where am I? Like, wherever I have that noise, I know instantly, like, oh, I'm somewhere else. I'm proving something else. I'm not actually present. I'm not actually doing the best of me. I'm somewhere else. I'm in my head.
Yeah. So kind of one of the pillars, the basis of this work is that, but it's the soil. Because I think the landscape and the soil of someone, the fabric of someone is really, really important, right?
It is.
And working the soil, like if you have toxic soil, you're going to get weeds, it's the nature of the game, right? So people could put really brilliant information, genius stuff into toxic soil, and it's going to come up, with the same result every time. So I'm always looking at preparing the soil, how can we alchemize that soil? How can we get that soil rich? So that when you put really great information, when you receive great information, it really can grow into something entirely different. But most people don't spend a lot of time on the soil. They're running the seeds. I just want the result. I just want the great information, right? And that's what happens in terms of content. People are always going after the content of life. And I mean, if you had to correct every deficiency you had, you'd be here for the rest of your life. So I'm just working on, can I just work on some access points, like the soil of something? If I can work on this, that you have noise in here, and we can dismantle that, what does it look like? That will take care of a whole, that could irrigate a whole section of your life.
Well, it's relative to what's in your life, right? You're not trying to just work on things for the sake of working on things. Like, so I'm in an intimate relationship with my wife. That's very, that comes up. I should be working on that, right? It's not like I should be trying to tackle something else creatively. I think of the soil, the concept of the soil for me is, like we were talking about, is the soil is the noise, or is it? Is it the?
Yeah, the soil is the noise. Like recognizing where you have
noise. Yeah, right? where you like what you're made up of, like what the parts
content,
of it are. Yep.
There's the context, which is the way things are designed, the way things are conditioned, kind of like the soil, right? The landscape, right? And the content is like the trees on the landscape. Like, what does that look like? What are those issues? What are the congestions? So that's why whenever you get into a fight and that he said, she said discussion, it's because people are arguing the content. Well, you said this and did this, and I was this, and the person goes, well, I didn't do that, I did this. And you're arguing it back and forth, and it's not until someone sees something about the context, moves to 35,000 feet and goes, yeah, God, I can see that I really didn't understand what you were saying.
Or I didn't hear you.
Or I didn't hear you right, that something starts to diffuse. Right.
Or I have an issue here that I'm vulnerable because I have a wound.
I feel I'm defensive about this or something like that.
I feel
that it starts to diffuse it. Well, that's the context of something. That's the soil you're looking at, the fabric of your life, which then can change all that rather than going through, 8 hours. Those relationships, 8 hours of like, oh my God. And you go, I really think we got somewhere. Oh yeah, it's 4 a.m. You're really putting a bullet in your head.
But I do that with my kids. My kids would go right to the content. My sister stole my candy.
Oh, yeah,
right?
Of course.
So it wasn't like, I left my candy out on the counter right next to my sister while she's eating dinner. Like the context is like the setup was there. Like, the 4-year-old sister had candy in front of her.
And then what you say, if you're a good parent, is like, well, we're giving your sister up for adoption. So that's not going to be a problem tomorrow. That's the way you handle that shit, right? Instantly.
It changes the context.
We don't like your sister.
It changes the context where that problem will happen again.
Raise your hand if you don't like your sister.
Everyone.
So
no, that's it. Because I think people don't think in that way. Like, right? They go to the content. The content is your default. You go there by nature, and especially when you're in the heat of it. And if you're in a place where you have noise, where that is trying to prove a point, where that content's coming out, that's where you're going to spend your time trying to take apart a problem or trying to take apart.
You will drive. That's where sanctimony becomes an art form. Yeah. Self-righteousness and sanctimony becomes,
and there's a lot of that now.
It becomes an art form. The
culture is
there's no question.
A big proponent of that.
What was it Ricky Gervais said? I think James Corden, I just read this. James Corden wrote a joke that Ricky Gervais had done. And he did it exactly, but he kind of took credit for it. And James Corden did it. And Ricky Gervais was like, excuse me, right? And he was talking about, he was saying, the internet is like at the town square. Right? Yeah. That that people come in and post things and Ricky Gervais said, no, it's not. It's like if you post in the town square, like guitar lessons, 3 days a week, and this is what they cost. People don't have an opinion about like guitar lessons. I hate guitar. Who thinks guitar's any good? Like piano's the only good thing. That's not the town square. This is a totally different square. And I thought it was great,
Which is accurate. Which is
accurate,
very accurate.
right? It's totally different. And to your point, everyone is giving opinions about what they think as if they've got relevance.
Well, and then that is the
credibility and authority.
And that noise is driving those opinions.
Yes,
right?
it is.
Where people have that noise and whatever was behind that noise.
I blame Sylvester Stallone for all of it.
Why would you blame Sylvester Stallone?
I blame him for everything. I blame him because when Rocky came out, it meant that anyone could be successful. Right? He wrote it in 15 minutes, and now everyone thinks hey, I'm something. And now, no, you're not.
It takes no work.
No, you're not. That's not true, right? I learned that lesson as an actor. No, that's not exactly my calling, right? So, but everyone thinks they can be something and everyone's an influencer. No, that was good for about 30 seconds, and now it's hard. It's now a window that's hard to get into.
But there are people. There's people's essences that do come out and are beautiful, which is different. That's not what we're talking about.
That's different. That's a different distinction. That's a different conversation. There's no noise when, like, if I was having a conversation now about, hey man, this is really great, and I'm really crushing it, and this is really going well, that would be noise.
Yeah.
Or if I was going, like you were, like completely like, what do I say? I don't know what to say. That's noise.
This is not going to be good.
No, do you understand? It's going to be congested. It's not going to come out freely, right? So there can be no noise.
Well, and it's going to turn people's listening off, right? It's going to have all sorts of affects that come with that.
It's no different than someone who's asking someone out on a date who has noise about that.
And that, which is common.
And that's very common. So they come up with some ridiculously conceptual line.
Even when people try and, to come up with great lines and all that.
Oh, no, even that's a concept. It's not organic and it's not real, right?
Yeah, it's not.
So it's similar. It's wherever it sets up residence and wherever you're congested and constricted.
So noise can come from lots of different places, right? And it can look in lots of different ways.
Just let me say about this. There's this line that I came up with because I've been working with people on if they have to raise money and they're raising money for companies that they're starting and their startups. And one of the lines a quote that I've made up is that if you know that what you have to contribute, what you have to give is greater than what you're asking for, you can ask for anything. So that's no different than dating, right? Or someone, there's no noise to that. If you know what you have to contribute is greater than what you're asking for, you can ask for anything. So if someone's asking someone out and they know it's going to be a great time and they're really a great date and they're a good person and whatever else, then it's an easy ask. But if what you're coming from is like noise and deficiency and I'm not enough and you're trying to prove your value by asking someone out, that's no different than when I look at actors or writers or director or whatever someone's in, when I go, this is probably not going to work out for you. And they go, what do you mean? How come you're telling me this? I said, because you're trying to prove your value as opposed to being creative. You're trying to validate your worth by the result as opposed to your essence is to be creative and to be generative. And and they're very different because you have noise in the area of career. And that's what noise in the area of career is like you're trying to prove your value rather than you're generative and creative and expressed with no noise.
Well, and that's the difference between career and craft, right? Like you can be brilliant in your craft, you can be in your essence, you can be creating these incredible music.
But as soon as career shows up, you now are congested.
Yeah, you get your break.
Like, right? I don't know what's happening and how come, and it's usually like, well, how come other people are getting a break and they suck? And, you have all this narrative and you have this noise about other people and comparative shopping and all this dysfunction that's taking place in the area of career. And as soon as someone hands you an instrument, you're like freed up and no noise, or someone has you sing. So understanding these differences is essential as far as I'm concerned.
One of the things I wanted to pick your brain on too more was the sources of noise, because we live in a comparative world is one of the things you've talked about, and I wanted to speak a bit more about how we can, how that drives noise and how we live in that world of comparison, where everything's trying to compare each other to what someone else has or what.
So I've when people ask that question of who would you like to, if you could talk to anyone, who would you talk to? Right. And some people like, I don't know, it's Da Vinci or it's like someone in the future and, or it's someone that, in the past that you think of, or, John Lennon, I don't know, whatever you would think, like, if you could talk to someone, who'd you talk to? And Einstein has always been someone I'd love to talk to, right? Because I think Einstein's a humanist. He was, a brilliant mathematician and a scientist, but I also felt like his work was based in his, I'm just making this up.
Well, there's more to him. You can tell by looking at him and his writings and things. There's more to him than just being a scientist.
Yeah, but I'm just saying I have no idea, right? Right? I'm just making
your creativity. Yeah, whatever you put on.
I'm just making this up,
yeah.
Right? That he was a humanist, right? And that's or it's like my interpretation of it, and that he was attempting to get relativity into human behavior. And what Newtonian thinking is, cause and effect, is, more comparative. That, I'm taller than, smaller than, funnier than, uglier than, richer than, better than, less than, right? We live in a comparative culture, right?
Yeah.
And I always thought Einstein would want us, to live in a relative culture. Like, the sun is in perfect relationship to the earth. It's relative to the earth. Too close, we'd burn to death. Too far away, we'd freeze to death. So he's always looking to get people in the appropriate relationship. And my work is about getting people into the appropriate relationship. Subtle pivots, dramatic pivots. Are you in the right marriage? Are you in the right relationship? Are you in the right partnership? Are you in the right business? Are you in the right situation? And it could be subtle. It could be dramatic. So being relative to one another is very different than being comparative to one another. So if you look at like a great, football is, I love football and I'm watching a lot of football. And so you look at a great team, you don't have your pulling guard or the tight end or the tackler, the center, being upset that they're in that position and they're not the quarterback, right? They're in alliance. They're in an alliance, and they're in a collaborative conversation with an intentional goal, right? So you can see they're relative
they're
to
connective,
one, they're relative to one another. They're not, and they know the differences. They're not aware. Someone knows they're 350 pounds and 6'5", and someone knows they're 225 pounds and 6'2", right? It's not that they aren't aware of the differences. It's just that they're not have a commentary noise about the differences and who's better and who's worse and who's up and who's down, right? So really understanding the relative aspect of this and how that works that would always be the intention, that we work standing in our own essence and expressing our own essence in relationship to someone else's. So you can celebrate other people's expression, and rather than you're jealous of that or envious of that or threatened by it.
We're trying to get something and be competitive where you're not competitive.
Well, that's a whole other story. Like that's a recipe for suffering. To be competitive where you're not competitive, right? I mean, that's kind of like, not to like keep belaboring, how you first started, right? In terms of rolling into the thing, like, this is not an area where you're competitive, right? In terms of,
no, I'm not a podcasting voice.
Yeah, I'm saying, so this is not an area. So you're, to try and be, so you have to start with just being a beginner and being brand new, right?
Yeah.
Rather than having to be like, I've got expertise in this area. So understanding your position and where you are and being freed up to play your position powerfully is part of that. Like if I played Roger Federer in tennis, right? I thought, I'm going to like take a point off him. No. My position has to be like, oh my God, I'm playing Roger Federer, right? And that's it. And celebrate and play and get the lessons that he's going to teach me, rather than I'm going to be competitive with him. So anytime someone's being competitive where they're not competitive, it is a recipe for suffering.
Yeah.
Right? And people so want to be something they're fucking not.
When it creates a lot of noise, because you want to keep bringing it back, that these are all these places that we generate noise from because of we're enrolling ourselves and trying to be comparative or trying to not value what we have and what someone else has, and then trying to use the best of both to get a great team, right, in the football sense, but that we try and be the same, or we try and do things where I'm trying to beat that person at a game that they're really good at, right, that I have no skills or ability to compete in. And so there's a lot of areas.
Yeah, I think that's what I just said.
Yeah, and I'm as a layperson.
Is there a reason that we're repeating that?
Yeah, because part of it is as a layperson who's very I want to make sure that it's really clear that we generate noise and we do it unknowingly in a lot of different places in our life. And it drives a lot of our behaviors, and we don't realize that. And for me, part of my evolution was just
most people just think it's their personality.
Oh yeah, no, they celebrate it.
No, this is just me. I mean, I have people do that all the time. I mean, I told you this radical thing. If I said this, I'm sure I'm going to get killed. We might have to edit this out, Denisha. We just might have to. But someone came in to me like months ago, and they said, a really arrogant guy's worth a couple of $1 billion. His wife thinks he's a complete asshole because he's just like arrogant, and jerk. And so she brought him in and he's like, I don't need this nonsense. I don't need this shit. Right. Right. And that's true. Right. Except it's going to cost you about $500 million in your divorce settlement if you don't get your head out of your ass. Right. So there is a motivation. Right. So he said, you know what? This is just the way that I am. I am this way, and I don't need anything, and this is just the way I am. I go, well, then I just need to fuck your wife. And he went, what the hell's wrong with you? And that's the first thing I said. And he goes, and she's like laughing hysterically, goes, I love this guy. I go, because that's just the way that I am. That's just the way that I am. I can't do anything about it. And he said, okay, I get your point. Yeah. So either you're here to like look.
Yeah,
and sometimes you have to need to do shock, and that's the difference between me and being a therapist. Sometimes, I'm amazed I haven't been arrested, but it's that sometimes there's shock therapy.
Yeah,
right?
It's for people to be able to see.
So like, you really have to do an intervention in that, right? And I knew he could handle it. It's interesting because you have to have that instinct too, right? That even though I insulted him entirely, right, in a certain way, I had a strong sense that he would stick. He would find a way.
Yeah.
Because if someone's just going to walk out or just going to like this, and then it's no point in having conversations, with then they just look abusive, as opposed to actually.
Well, and your intention is to create and to help him, right?
Yeah.
And so you have the right intention.
And so most people know that, right? They have a strong sense of that. But yeah, so really understanding that, most people are, wanting to be something they're not. Right. Well, it's really, and when you see people, when I think people are really delicious, great, creative, they're just so in the zone of who they are, doing what they're meant to do. Like you look at, a mother with like 7 children, right? It's just so effortless for that person in a lot of ways and so natural for that person. No noise about it. Then you look at someone who has 1 child and they're like, they're out of their flipping minds, right? So it's like wherever you get noise. And that's how I am. That's how I'm with family, right? Everyone thinks I'm completely nuts, right? Because I'm saying the stupidest things because in that area, I've got a lot of noise, right? And now I'm learning. It's like a language. And it seems like, well, wouldn't you have learned this after 3 marriages and 3 children? And so, no, it's still an ongoing conversation. Now, I'm a beginner. In the area of understanding, hearing, listening, because those familial wounds and traumas, had such impact, on me that it shows up. Like, of course, if you've had trauma in an intimate relationship in the family of origin, where do you think it's going to show up? 30 years later, 20 years
later.
Not
a surprise.
In your intimate relationships. And so I've had to be a true beginner, and my wife's really smart in that area, right? And you've got to know where you've got credibility and where you don't. You got to know where you're a beginner, and that's what I mean. Being in the right relationship. So me as a beginner, me learning, me discovering things, me being open, me letting someone else lead, right? I mean, I can certainly do all the things like, sports and everything else, and take the kids to school and, do all the things that are there. But in terms of their emotional development and talking that through, I really follow Jen's lead on that. So it's really surrendering to where that you've got noise and you're working something out. And you can work it out. Now, I'll never be my wife. I'll never be someone who's exceptional in that area. Right? But you can be someone who's freed up and liberated and not trying to compete and be creative and not arguing for your point of view when you're completely out of your mind and your head's up your ass. Right? So you can, you're never going to be like, someone like might never be great as someone who has real natural talent and works it, but they can certainly, be better. You look at coaches, I'm going to keep using football metaphors, that the greatest coaches were not the best players a lot of times, right? They just loved the game so much and they had to figure it out because they loved it and they had to work at it, right? Someone who's talented, who's just got natural talent, doesn't have any idea why they have it. That's a coach's job to do the diagnostic of that, right? And to figure that out. But usually the greatest coaches are the people who are not the best players. And that's me in an intimate relationship, right? Like I was certainly not a good player. So I became a good coach because I love I love the conversations. I love the intricacies. I love the learning. I'm curious about it, and I'm clear I wasn't that.
Well, I mean, the dialogue around noise has been so transformational for me. And I think the thing that it took me a long time to get that I want to make sure we land on here at the end is no noise is no noise, right? Like it literally is no noise.
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, because like I look at when I'm in leadership, which is one of the areas where I have a lot of qualities where I have no noise, right?
Yes,
when I'm in leadership, there is no noise. I mean, it doesn't even feel like I'm thinking, right?
That's right, yeah.
Like there's a level of just acting and doing and architecting. Intimate relationships, I'm always thinking, right? There's always trying to forecast. I'm always trying and that is the noise showing up. And that no noise was hard for me to get, that it literally is no noise.
Yeah.
That it's quiet.
Yeah.
There's a level of almost Buddhist sense to it. And the other piece is what do I do when I have noise? And you framed a couple of different areas where you got to ask for help. Like whether it's coach, whether you're asking someone else who's got no noise in that area, right? That's a simple way to start. Now, there's a lot more we'll talk about in other episodes about how do you start getting into the noise to start dismantling these areas where you have challenges, right? And be able to be more effective where you want to be more effective in those areas. But asking for help was a great start as well.
Yeah, you don't want to keep going to someone who's got noise in that area for advice, right? It's
exactly.
like, hey, the house is on fire. I know, we're going to burn to death. No, you want someone who knows to put out the fire, or we have no money. I know, we're going broke. And usually that's where people hook up. Yeah, that's what most relationships are dysfunctional.
Or if you have noise, you'll go to that person that has the most noise.
That's why it explains. I always talk about this in relationships, which we'll talk more. It's dysfunctional chemistry. Because you go, how did those two people end up? Are you kidding? The dysfunction. If you look at it from a particular point of view, you understand like, oh, you're a project manager and I'm a project. So it's a perfect dance. Oh, I'm not enough and you're too much. Yeah, great. Let's get together. So that's literally where you can see, that most of us come together with this a lot of times in the same noise, right? Like,
well, it's attraction. Right?
And it's dysfunctional attraction, which has, people like, noise attract noise. So now we're compounding the noise as opposed to someone's diffusing it, like, we're going to go broke and go, no, we're good, we're fine, we're going to work it out, right?
Yeah, so it's the difference between listening to it and not listening.
Well, you also want to be, I always say if I can get this in front of you, right? And we talk about attraction and chemistry. If I can get you before you hook up or do something, we can talk about your chemistry and your attraction so that you're not keep attracting someone to a similar noise that you have.
Well, and again, I think it's a whole another series on the relationships.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack in the relationships.
Well, it's also such a dicey conversation.
It is.
And people love it's spicy. And that's why I have Married at First Sight. I mean, have you seen that show?
Yes.
Oh my God, it's unbelievable.
My wife loves it though. She watches it.
I love that show too, but I'm like, this is so crazy. And it's not going to work out, right? And they're like this, I can't believe he's like not into me. And like they're all like upset about it. Like, yeah. We don't even know what the motivation of the agendas are about this, right? So
look, I think the fantastic dialogue today. We're gonna again push pause on this one, and I think the next one we'll talk more about again identities, getting into more relationships, how this plays out in your life, and we'll dive in deeper. So
okay,
awesome.
This has been a Gradients production.